Coming up on this episode of Flirtations, we have neuroscientist and author Nicole Vignola on the show as we talk about the neuroscience of the crush. Have you ever wondered what's really happening in your brain when you have a crush on someone? Nicole gives us all the details and breaks down the difference between a crush, limerence, and obsession, and how you can catch yourself from going too far into delulu. We also tackle the heartbreak side of things, like what happens in your brain when you experience rejection, or when your crush maybe doesn't like you back. And finally, Nicole shares insights on the difference between feeling butterflies in dating, from having crush energy in dating, from genuinely liking someone in dating, how we can walk rather than fall into love. I think you're going to love that so much, and how we cannot break our own hearts in this process. So, whether you're crushing hard right now or just curious about the science behind those all-consuming crush feelings, this episode is packed with insights to help you flirt with the highs and lows of the crush. Let's do this, flirties.
I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. Hello, my name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach and a gay Libra. Everyone has an inner flirt.
Hey, flirty.
Live, laugh, flirt.
Work the flirt.
Work the flirt. Delulu is the Salulu. Expert on the flirt.
Hey, flirty. There's always another flirt.
Everyone has an inner flirt. Get out of your head and into the flirt.
Flirties. On the show today is Nicole Vignola, neuroscientist and author of the book Rewire, Break the Cycle, Alter Your Thoughts, and Create Lasting Change, to have a conversation with us about the neuroscience of the crush. Hi, Nicole. Welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here. I have never been on a flirtcast before. You better flirt with me or I'm leaving.
Oh, Nicole, I think we're already getting started.
I love it.
Yes, this is the Flirtations Flirtcast. Yes, very branded over here at Flirt Headquarters.
I love it. I love flirting. Oh my gosh, I love flirting so much.
It is truly the best. What's one of your favorite things about flirting?
I think it's just so fun. Like, I've always been a flirt, even in relationships. My partners, like, I'm normally in very secure relationships, so my partners are okay with it. And quite funnily, my ex is actually quite a big flirt as well. It'd be so funny. We'd be at a restaurant, I'd be like, stop flirting with a fucking waitress. But I would say that in like a flirty way myself.
It's so much fun. And I think a lot of flirt energy comes through with crushes too. Yeah, it's a little bit of fantasy, right? We're going to get into that some today. But here at the top of the show, I mean, I have to ask, one of the first questions must be, have you ever had a crush?
Have I ever had a crush? I've had many crushes. You know what's funny is, so my best friend was visiting, and I said something like, oh, I have a crush on this actor or whatever. I was like, oh, he's my biggest like celebrity crush. And she was like, that's so funny, Nick. You always have a crush on somebody. Yeah. I always have a crush.
Me too.
Yeah. I'm glad, because I was trying to explain to her, like, I think, you know, there's a difference between limerence and obsession and just having a little innocent crush, which is what I have. I have innocent crushes on people. I don't attach any importance to it. And I think crushes are different to actually liking somebody. And obviously, as you ask me questions, we'll get into the science of what the differences are.
Oh, yeah. The flirties came through with some of those questions. It's like when they start to go into that realm of limerence, obsession, infatuation, right? The intrusive thoughts. Now it's all they can think about is their crush. But I'm like, I say crushes make the world go round. If I don't have a crush, am I even alive, Nicole? I'm not sure. I think
I love it.
We're speaking the same language. I got to say, this was, I was doing some of my flirt search throughout, earlier this week in preparation for the interview. So working my part-time job at Trader Joe's, right? I'm asking some of the customers, I'm asking some of the crew, right? About crushes. What do they think? Have they had one? What does that feel like for them? And this was one, every single person was like, let me know when this episode comes out.
Oh my God, amazing. I'm so excited.
I think it's something so many people, a lot of the flirties will relate to. But here at the top, also, I want to ask, what is Nicole Neuroscience as you go by on Instagram? But what is neuroscience?
So neuroscientists essentially study the mechanisms of the brain. So, you know, in psychology, you're applying theories and you're exploring whether there's a outcome, etc. Whereas with neuroscience, you're looking at the brain structures, you're looking at what's actually happening down to a nanometer scale in the neurons. So we're looking at different parts of the brains and what do they do, and then how does that apply to psychology as well. So there's an overlap there for sure. But yeah.
Okay. How did you get started in this work?
I mean, I've always been fascinated with behavior and brains, and I wanted to go into psychiatry. I wanted to be a doctor. And I didn't get into medical school, but I was always fascinated with the brain, and neuroscience was quite a new topic at the time.
Yeah.
So I sort of studied neuroscience when it was still fairly kind of unpopular. Huberman popularized it for us, which is fantastic. Amen to Huberman. But back then it wasn't really a thing. And someone had told me about neuroscience, and I thought, oh yeah, maybe I should study that. And I had an existential crisis when I finished my degree, actually, because I thought I've just wasted all my money on a degree that I'm never going to use because I don't want to work in research. And here I am. So I then went on to do my master's, and I love neuroscience. I'm very pragmatic and I love facts. So whilst I have no issue with psychology, obviously, and I love psychology, my master's was in psychology, I love the details of what is going on down to a fundamental level in the brain when it comes to neuroscience.
Yes, and I'm excited to learn more about those details today. It's like, our behaviors are manifestations of, patterns, thoughts, stories, like how we behave and how we act and interact with people out in the world, how we think about ourselves. Fascinating. But it all starts with something in the brain first.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, this is really, really cool. I think let's, get into the brain a little bit now. When we're having a crush, what are some of those things that's happening in the brain?
Ooh, okay, a couple of things. So firstly, dopamine rises. So dopamine is a transmitter that is responsible for attaining the reward. So the ventral tegmental area is a part of the brain that is responsible for cravings and wanting to find out about this person. And crushes are fun because you don't know anything about them. And so your brain will A, fill in the blanks. B, and that can be down a dangerous territory, and we'll go into that in a second. But B, you're so focused on wanting to get information, you're testing the waters, and am I going to get reciprocation? And that's all really fun. And so that happens. But with that, there's a cost that comes with that price, and that is that serotonin drops. Because there's so much emphasis on dopamine production, the serotonin system is essentially neglected, if you will, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
And what happens is that when there's a drop in serotonin, people think that serotonin is what makes you happy. But what it does is it actually stabilizes your mood. So if you are happy, it helps you maintain healthy levels of happiness so that you don't end up in a manic sort of happiness that is delusional. And when you're in a low, it helps you come out of that low efficiently. So that's what serotonin is actually responsible for. Okay. And what that means is that when there's a drop in it, we actually get more compulsive and obsessive thoughts. And we start to go down that route of stalking, obsessing, overthinking everything. Yeah. And I would say that that's where we need to draw that line in the crush. Because our brain is trying to fill in the blanks. Yep. And if you let it, you will go the extra mile to try and find out information and then formulate an entire idea of who this person is based on information that you don't have.
Yes.
And what I would say to anyone that has a crush is enjoy it, but leave the clues to the actual finding out in real life. Rather than you trying to put two and two together, like, or maybe he hasn't texted you back and therefore he's got someone else. That may not necessarily be the case, but we start to, perpetuate these narratives in our mind about what could be happening. And then that can shift our perspective on what is actually happening. So I love that saying that says, we see things as we are, not as they actually are.
That's a good one.
I love that. And I think that that's where we draw the line. So make sure that you are enjoying the crush for what it is, but not trying to fill in the blanks all by yourself, because your brain will try and do that. You go down a route where you're stalking them on Instagram, you find out who their ex is, and then you're like, it's a rabbit hole, and I don't suggest you go there. Just look forward, not backwards.
Have you been looking at my search history? Just kidding.
No, you should see mine.
But this is so true. Like whether you see someone, right, you're out running errands or at a party, an event or something, and someone's cute, and maybe you're like, oh, who's that kind of thing? Who's that? Or you're actually starting to date someone that you don't really know a lot or know very well yet. And so, yeah, you're filling in all the blanks. A couple sayings that come to mind that I've seen like across social media are that crushes are a lack of information. Yeah, that's true. And that it's unrequited but unexpressed emotion or appreciation or gratitude or just some type of attraction that is right. The other person doesn't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do with these thoughts and feelings? You tend to perhaps go into the stalking, right? Trying to figure out all the things. Are they single? Are they not? What's happening? Who are they? Yeah.
Yes. And I think you're going to have to figure out what your level of healthy is, because obviously there's some part of you that wants to know if this person can be approached. If you don't know anything about them, you want to know if they're single or not, so that you can, potentially, shoot your shot.
Yeah.
But it's a tricky one because crushes should be fun.
Yeah.
But then if you're crushing, I know I joke and I say that I crush on everyone. I don't crush on everyone. Like for me, there's a very clear difference between whether I like someone or I'm just crushing them. And for me, crushes, I leave crushes alone. Like I don't actually inquire into them. But I've got really good self-awareness and like intuition. Yeah. So I know when I actually like someone and it's worthy of pursuing or whether it's just, to be honest, I don't really crush on anyone in real life that much. It's mostly like celebrities or like some girl that's come up on Instagram and she's like belly dancing. And I'm like, oh my God, I have the biggest crush on her. I mean, I had a crush on the waitress at this restaurant the other day, but again, I'm just crushing. Like she's just nice to look at. Like
it's crush energy. It's fun. Who is one of your celebrity crushes?
Oh, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, for sure.
God, such a good one. I have the biggest crush. I mean, we're kind of in Wicked season still. Jonathan Bailey. Good Lord.
Oh, it's a good one. Do you know I love Theo James as well?
Yes.
He looks a bit like too up himself. And that's why I actually never delve into crushes, because I'm always like, they're disappointing. Crushes tend to disappoint me when I find out what they're actually like.
Yeah, maybe because we hype them up, right? And as you were talking about a little bit earlier, we try and fill in all the gaps about who someone is, and then we create this image of them perhaps in our mind versus who they actually are.
I think also at face value, you can crush on someone, but then when you actually get to know the details of it, you're kind of like, well, that's just ruined everything now. In England, we have a term called fancy. I don't know if you guys use that. You fancy somebody.
From time to time, yes.
Fancy the pants off somebody. I feel like that's a really good differentiation between a crush and whether you actually like someone. Now, I actually fancy the pants of somebody who I like. Obviously, I have some level of crush on, obviously, but it's very different.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because I actually like this person and I'm getting to know this person rather than I've infatuated them in my mind about something that they are potentially not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think the fancy for me is different to the crush.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Started like to separate, I actually like this person versus, and I want to get to know them, maybe date them, right? See what that experience could be like versus, something caught my eye. Maybe I think they're attractive or their style is really cool or their personality is cool. Their energy is cool. Something like that. Yeah. Making that difference. I think that's what's helped me in my own, just like crush energy as well. Cause I used to do exactly what you were saying earlier, where I would like very much attach super quickly and I would go down the rabbit hole of just wanting to know everything, asking about them, talking about them, looking them up on social media, Google, all the things. But I've had to just like call my energy back, right? And it's like, what do I actually see in this person that's making me crush? Like, do I just think they're hot and I just think they're cool to like pretty to look at? Or was it something about, if it's a celebrity crush, maybe it's their acting style or just the way they carry themselves? Like, what is actually piquing my interest here? And then maybe you've heard like oftentimes what we see or what we're attracted to in other people is what we also maybe have within ourselves that isn't
expressed or isn't realized, or like we see like, oh God, they seem so cool, and maybe it's highlighting what I perceive as a flaw in me, which isn't a flaw. It's just sort of like a little bit of that mirror, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think people do hold up mirrors to us. So I like that. I like that for sure. Yeah, I think, the difference for me between a crush and maybe liking someone is it's more nuanced in the sense that when you like someone, you actually you get a different feeling. Like, of course, there's an element of having a crush on them because that's how it probably started.
Yeah.
But you actually want to get to know their personality rather than find out who they are. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it definitely makes sense to me.
No, it makes, makes sense.
But I was just going to say, just going back to the neuroscience of what's going on in a crush is that additionally, that frontal cortex activity that's responsible for logical thinking is diminished. And so you start to,
oh God.
I look at the face. For anyone that's listening, the face that I just got there was like, oh, sugar. So you start to impair your impulse control and your ability to make sound decisions. And again, I think that that's part of it. I think you should enjoy it. I think it's exciting that someone makes you feel like that. But then you need to draw the line at, whether this becomes limerence and obsession versus, this is actually just something fun that you get to enjoy for a little bit. And if it manifests into something else, great. If it doesn't, then being able to let go at the right time. That's a huge one for me that I teach a lot of my clients, because people will attach importance to something and then they won't let it go because the ego is saying, no, you can't deal with this rejection, or no, you've built this idea up in your head and now it's not fitting into the model that you've created for yourself. And so you get disappointed.
Let's stay here for a minute, because I got a couple questions here about how we can catch ourselves in this process of crushing when we are going into limerence, when we are maybe not thinking as clearly, and then perhaps experience a rejection, right? Or what we perceive as a rejection because maybe our crush isn't reciprocated, or our crush doesn't even maybe know who we are. It's just someone that we see around.
Definitely doesn't know who I am.
I get this version of kind of the crush question where it's a coffee shop or the gym. It's like someone you see around in your everyday life, like you're kind of in the same sphere, but you don't actually talk. You haven't spoken to them. Right? Like, so you just have a crush on the barista or something like that. So, but how we can catch ourselves from maybe going too far into delulu with our crush?
Yeah. Well, I would say if it's consuming your every thought, and, I think stalking is completely normal. I think it's part of it. It is, we are sentient beings that want to know information. And now we have the ability at our fingertips to be able to do it. So why not? Right. Yeah. But are you figuring out who their aunt's sister's cousin is? That I would say that's probably a line for me personally.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you know what their mother's name is? But you're going to have to figure out that line for yourself. And then also figure out whether it's affecting you negatively. Is it leaving you feeling rubbish, or is it just leaving you feeling like still excited and fun or whatever? And I think that any addiction, if you will, and I know that addiction's a big word, but it's kind of they're parallels. Is that the definition of an addiction is when you repeatedly do something that is bringing on adverse consequences. So are you repeatedly stalking this person and then leaving yourself feeling rubbish, or, not feeling happy about what's going on? I mean, that's one way to do it. Yeah. And then I think it's also really important to make sure that you're delineating the gaps that you're filling in and what's actually real.
Okay.
Because when we start to put too much emphasis on the future as well, who this person could be in our lives, or who we want them to be in our lives, and how things could play out, we disappoint ourselves. And I think it's hard, but, living in that moment of enjoying it for what it is right there and then, like even this person that I fancy, like it's going really well, but I have to also make sure that I'm not putting too much emphasis on the future because I don't know this person very well.
Right.
And so, it's a fine balance between enjoying what could be,
Yeah.
but also not putting all my eggs in that basket and expecting something that is just going to disappoint. And when you can live like that, and I truly don't know how you do it and what the answer is, but when you can live like that, you start to really live in the moment and enjoy everything for what it is. And if this person ends up not being the person that you end up being with, then at least you get to say, you know what, I really enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah.
Close that chapter, move on, next crush, let's go.
Yeah. Yes, there's always another flirt. There's always another crush as well. That's really, really helpful because whether you are, you're having just some crushes or you're even starting to date someone, you're out there dating and it's still somewhat new. It's so important, right, to not go into that potential trap that it's so easy to go into because your brain, right, it just wants to know. Yeah. It wants answers. Who is this person? Yes. Can I rely on them? Can I trust them? What's going to happen? Things are uncertain, unknown, especially if you're bringing some trauma into the experience. Like you just want to feel like I can take an exhale here. Yeah. I relate to that.
Yeah. And I think a practical tip is the most underrated tip on planet Earth is walking. When we go outside and we are moving through the world, what happens is our eyes move laterally side to side. You're not physically doing that, but it's happening. Yeah. The other thing that's happening is your eyes are stabilizing as the periphery is moving past you. We call it optokinetic nystagmus. And I'm only putting that in case anyone wants to read about it. Yeah. But what that does is it activates an area of the brain called the orbitofrontal cortex. And what that does is it competes for resources with the amygdala. Okay. The amygdala is the emotional part of the brain that communicates all of these infatuations and limerence and obsessive thoughts. Yeah. And so when you go out for a walk, have you ever gone out, come back, and you feel like you're a lot more logical and you're like, oh, actually, I should probably stop stalking this person?
Absolutely.
It kind of severs that emotional behavior and it reinstills logic. Okay. And so if you've gone down a place of rumination or stalking or obsession, whatever, we've all been there. Go for a walk, take a breather, come back, and then reassess.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm so glad I have in my anti-anxiety dating guide. Walking is one of the
amazing.
It's one of the solutions. It really is like sometimes we just need to move. But now I'm learning so much more about why it's actually soothing, and I think can serve the purpose of bringing you back to the moment. Right? Yes. Like getting out of your head and more so back into your body. What do I actually feel? Like let's come back to reality.
Yeah, totally. And another thing that happens is when our eyes converge, so when you're looking at a screen, what that does is it signals the stress hormones to say that you are ready to be active and you need to focus. It's the reason why, you can focus on things on the computer, etc. And it's the reason why if you've ever taken like an MCAT or a UCAT or an LSAT, whatever, some sort of very difficult exam, they normally put you in these cubicles. Yes. Because you need to focus on the thing at hand. Any open periphery can open your visual field, which can then open your way of thinking. Right. So any creative type thinking you want to be doing with a panoramic view, with high ceilings, anything that is, requires focus, you would do in a smaller room in a cubicle. Yeah. So when you're on your phone, you end up in this quite literally tunnel vision rabbit hole where next thing you know, you do know what their mother's cousin's daughter's name is. And you're like, how did I get here? And that's when I would say intervene, go outside, go for a walk and just open up your periphery because it will snap you out of that kind of tunnel vision type thinking.
Go touch some grass. That's fascinating.
Literally touch some grass.
That's, I think, sometimes why that explains so much about my creative process as well, and also kind of why we go into doom scrolling, right? Why we can be on our phones and all of a sudden 30 minutes, an hour has passed, and you're like, oh my gosh, right. You're so entranced by what's happening. It just
exactly, and that that intermittent dopamine reinforcement when you attain the information is keeping you there. Yeah. And so maybe some of these parallels playing out with crushes as well. Yes, exactly. And that's, and that's why I say it again, like enjoy the crush, but just draw the line for yourself where it doesn't become obsessive, because it can easily become obsessive. And we put too much emphasis on who these people could be for us without actually knowing who they actually are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I always try and kind of tightrope walk that balance, because I want the flirties to have so much fun with their dating lives and with their flirting and with their crushes, and a little bit of delulu, a little bit of fantasy, I think can be cool, right? Like, be creative. I want the flirties to be excited, but at the same time feel really empowered and confident, clear, and in control about their experience, so that they don't, spend hours looking at their phone, or they can't sleep at night, or something like that, where it starts to, like you were saying earlier, just detract from the overall quality of their life.
Yeah. And almost like breaking your own heart. You know what's interesting? I was talking to a friend of mine. She's incredible. You should definitely interview her. Her name is Emma Louise Boynton. She runs Sex Talks.
Okay. Yes.
Oh, yeah. You should definitely speak to her. And she was saying to me, because, we were talking about like trusting people, right?
Yeah.
And that for me is a huge one, because, women, I think, also struggle to trust men. Yeah. For a variety of reasons that I probably don't need to go to, but I'm sure everyone listening is like, yes.
Absolutely.
And she was saying, like, don't break your own heart don't break your own heart twice, or don't get your heart broken. What did she say? She said, don't break your heart twice by breaking your heart the first time by keeping yourself closed off. Because that's the first heartbreak. And then if it doesn't work out, that's the second heartbreak. She was like, you might as well just dive in. Of course, there are levels to this diving in. You don't want to overstep lines and stuff, but open yourself up to opportunities and enjoy it and have fun. And like you said, be a little bit delulu, because it's part of it. And that's the wonderful thing about the human brain, is that when you find someone that can make you feel a little bit crazy, hopefully it's not, every Tom, Dick, and Harry, or every Sally, Emma, and whatever.
Yeah.
But when you do find that person, it's fun. It's fun to lose your mind a little bit. It's part of it. Yeah. It's not often that we meet people that can make us feel a little bit crazy. And I think that we should enjoy it.
That's right. Oh, that's a beautiful quote, not to break your heart twice. It's like, one of the themes I've been playing with on Flirtations, and in my content some too, is kind of this waiting for when, right? Just sort of like you're waiting for when they approach you, or you're waiting for the first date or the relationship to do the thing, right? Wear the outfit, take the trip. And in this place of waiting for when, you can really build up expectations, potential, what could be, what should be, all of that stuff. And like I've been in that space for huge periods of my life. And it's, it kind of breaks your heart in the process when you feel like maybe you have this loss, or you're missing out. Yeah.
You're holding back.
Big one.
And, heartbreaks, they rewire us every single time. So you learn something new. So even if you do end up getting heartbroken, I mean, it sucks, and I don't encourage you to go down that route. Nobody wants to be heartbroken, but they all teach us something. And, I've been heartbroken a few times in my life, and every single time I've leveled up, because I've learned what I want and what I don't want. Yeah. And I have a stronger intuition now about who I want to be with, and what I look for in another person. Yeah. Because that all starts to form part of your subconscious understanding of the world. So,
okay.
We learn through input, and then our brain creates a database of information based on our previous experiences. You can't access every single one of those memories or thoughts at the right time, because there's a lot in there. Have you ever had that feeling where you smell something and it reminds you of a memory that you had when you were like 8 years old, and you're 100%. Like, what?
Yeah.
I have not thought about that in like 20 years, right? I'm 33 now, so a bit more than 28 years, but you know what I'm saying? And so that means that, that memory is still stored there. So you still have an understanding of the world. That's just a memory, but you've got nuances in how the world works as well.
Yeah.
And so that's still there. And over time, as we get older and we get more experience and our heart breaks more and we have a crush and it doesn't work out, your brain starts to form this database of what it knows about the world. And if you can heal your traumas, and you can heal your insecurities, and you can, work on all that stuff, you have a subconscious that knows what it's doing. So you can intuitively start to understand if you have a crush, whether it's a crush because you like this person, or it's a crush that you're just crushing on for the hell of crushing, for the sake of enjoying it.
Okay, this is really fascinating because I got a couple questions here about the neuroscience of rejection, of heartbreak. What happens in the brain when that is happening, whether it's with a crush or a relationship or those first few dates? And this is really, I'm learning so much about the brain, and it's rewiring the subconscious.
Yes. So, I mean, rejection, heartbreak, one of the worst things that we can experience as humans. I mean, social rejection, whether it's romantic, platonic, work-related, it's never nice. It really tackles the deep psyche of the human mind that is responsible for keeping you safe. Because all of a sudden you're being rejected from a group. And, you know, fundamentally, genetically, evolutionarily, we need to belong to a group.
Yeah.
We are lucky that we live in a world now where if one group rejects you, you can just go somewhere else and someone else will accept you, which is fantastic. And that's what's so great about, you know, the modern world that we're living in. And so, you know, what happens in the first few days of a rejection or a heartbreak is that we have a withdrawal of these feel-good neurochemicals, predominantly dopamine, because your body goes in withdrawals. And so you'll start to ruminate, you'll start to want to obsess, you'll start to want to try and prove the other person wrong because, you know, that's what the dopamine system will also want to do, and simultaneously to making you feel a little bit crazy. Additionally, there's a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, which is essentially responsible for autobiographical memories. And what it does is it will replay over and over again the scenario in your head, or it will start to reminisce on the good times and put you on rose-tinted glasses.
Yes. Those are the two dominant experiences that I hear doing this work, right? When someone is going through a heartbreak or experience a rejection, that is exactly what happens.
It's like a broken record in your mind that you can't turn off.
Yeah.
And what I would say to that is that you can use that ability to fundamentally understand what went wrong so that you can put that to future use. So instead of thinking about, oh, this is what I should have done, you could say, well, this is what I will do next time so that I don't end up in situation B again.
Yeah. Oh, and it's probably a practice too. It's so hard because I would often ruminate maybe on the good times, right? You're focusing on those, but also just replaying something over and over in my head as if I'm going to get a different result, right? As if I can somehow change the past. I mean, I know that's not going to happen, but change the way I feel about it. Let me just keep going back there, replaying something over and over, and maybe I'll accept it or engineer a different feeling for myself. But inevitably, that wasn't a successful tactic.
No, exactly. But, you know, we can use that to our ability to just put it towards future use. And think about it as you're upgrading your system. So you've got this database of subconscious that's looking out for you all the time. I believe so anyway. And it's giving you a strong intuition because later in life, you just fundamentally know whether someone ticks your boxes or not without really having to explain it, right?
Yeah. You hear that, Flirty's upgrading the system.
So you're just upgrading that database. You're just software update and use it to your advantage. And you go, you know what? The next time I'm in this situation, you'll be able to see the red flags sooner because you already know what they look like. You don't know the red flag until you've experienced it. Then you get into situation B and you're like, oh, okay, I know what this looks like. I'm not doing that one again.
Oh, this is so cool. I want to ask you one more question here because I oftentimes get the question, how can I date more intuitively? How can I be more in touch with my intuition, maybe separate anxiety from intuition? And what I'm hearing is as you start to develop that self-awareness about patterns, bring yourself back to the moment, maybe go take a walk, right? And reprogram your subconscious in the process, you become more connected to your intuition.
You basically answered my question.
I had to talk it through myself to see am I getting this? But how? Yeah. Okay.
But what I was going to say is I think, you know, the difference between anxiety and intuition, and I actually have a whole YouTube video on this where I explain it and I give practical tips to figure out where you're sitting.
Yeah.
But anxiety feels uncomfortable. It feels like you're trying to clutch at something and it doesn't feel very nice. Intuition feels open. It feels right. It feels correct.
Okay.
Okay. And I think that we should lean into that intuition. We should take the steps and put ourselves out there. And if the person then doesn't reciprocate, you should not fault yourself because you gave your intuition what it needed and you listened to yourself. And I think that that is fundamentally the most important thing that we can do as humans is just listen to ourselves. And if it goes wrong, because we can't control the outcome of someone else's choices, but we can control what we can control, which sounds obvious when you say it, but
Yeah. And how can we start to just trust ourselves more? I'm thinking of the flirty that is on that edge of maybe they've been in a state of hyper awareness, hyper arousal for a while. They've really operated out of their own anxiety for maybe a long time. And they're like, wait a second, this doesn't feel right to trust myself.
Yes. And that could be due to, previous traumas or previous experiences, and you may, help in that rewiring. And I think that our traumas can lie to us a little bit as well. And, there's a fine balance between being able to lean into your intuition, but also not. And again, I talk about this in detail on the YouTube channel. But when we trust ourselves because we say we're going to do the things that we said we're going to do. When we do the things that we said we were going to do, like go to the gym, eat healthy, not text the guy back, not text the girl back when we said we weren't going to, or when we start to stick to what we've said, we start to have a better relationship with ourselves. When we have a better relationship with ourselves, we lean into our intuition a lot better as well.
Fantastic. So good. And it's like, flirties, don't worry. When you want to know, right, should I text them, right? It's been 2 days or something like that. I'm going to answer your dating questions. I am. But at the same time, I hope one of the many takeaways you get from this conversation is just to feel more empowered and connected to your intuition, and that you have the answer. Like, your intuition should be one of your number one dating strategies, I think.
And if you're not getting what you want out of this other person, then don't be afraid to just call it and set that boundary for yourself, because that's another way of listening to your intuition.
Yes.
But again, when you break your own heart by continuously crossing those boundaries and accepting the bare minimum, that's when you start to break down that sort of relationship with yourself. There are other people out there. Don't do it just because it's the ego saying, well, I need to win. I need to know. I need to see if I can get an answer.
Right. Yeah.
When they are not reciprocating and they're not giving you what you fundamentally want, just move on. Come on. There's so many crushes, like you said.
I know. There really are. Another crush, another flirt. But this is so good. What you were talking about, not breaking your heart twice. It's like, because I see this all the time. I'm sure you do too. It's like we hold back and we don't advocate for ourselves or don't express ourselves. We feel like we might be, right, I'm using air quotes here, too much or something in that realm, right? I hear that a lot. But I feel like it's, the very pretty popular phrase, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. I don't think a connection that is for you, whatever the context, platonic, romantic, somewhere in between, a crush, right? I'd much rather you be authentic.
Yeah. And if you're too much for somebody, you will be enough for somebody else. So
100%.
Figure out what you want and then just stick to it no matter what. And if the other person doesn't reciprocate, somebody else will. They absolutely will.
Yeah.
And just dive in. I think we're losing the ability to communicate as humans as well. And that's what scares me, because we're afraid to communicate our feelings and emotions and put ourselves out there. But I think that the true artists and the true believers, the dreamers, the crushers, the flirties, they... we should be able to just openly say how we feel. And if somebody else doesn't have the emotional availability or maturity to be able to take that on board, then that's on them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. I totally agree, Nicole. I want to, I've made some videos about this. This is always a theme that comes up on Flirtations, is that of communication. And this is one of the... I don't know if it's just how much time we spend online or on our phones, or if it's kind of post-COVID and pandemic and just doing so much digitally. But our ability to communicate, just express what's on your mind. It's like, And
I always say mixed messages create bad situations. And so I think that that's really funny, because when you don't communicate how you feel, that starts to sort of murky the waters. Now, what's really interesting as well is that, yes, our phones are diminishing our ability to communicate with humans.
Yeah.
Now, when we communicate via text, we don't release oxytocin. Oxytocin is a pair bonding hormone. It's also responsible for figuring out who's part of your in-group, who's part of your out-group.
Yeah.
So speaking to people in person, on the phone, hearing their voice, FaceTiming is going to have a different effect to texting. And it is the reason why I don't put emphasis on texting or not.
Yes.
If someone doesn't text me back, I try not to overthink it.
Yeah.
And especially because if you pick up the phone and that person's there ready to speak to you, that's, for me, speaks louder volumes than someone who wants to text all the time. Because
100%.
texting doesn't have the same effect on us. And it almost scares me if someone's too good at texting. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I don't know if I'm being too millennial about this, but
no, I don't think so at all. And I'm just learning something. Another new thing here. I've never heard texting lacking oxytocin, but I have heard it really being correlated to dopamine. And that's why we can get really into it, because you hear back and you get that hit of, oh, this person maybe likes me, they're there for me, they're thinking about me, but it's not actually creating a bond.
Exactly. Because the phone is addictive, and so is the texting and the replying and will I get a text back? Do they like my stuff? And I think that that's all sort of fake. So pick up the phone, talk to your crush. If you don't get reciprocation, that's your answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's like all the texting, the good morning, the good night text, right? You're hitting each other up on socials or following each other. It doesn't mean what you think it means. And you're correlating it with intimacy, that, oh, this person really likes me, when
maybe not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Exactly. What else is happening, right?
Yeah. Exactly, because it's easy to do all of those things, right? Yes. It's easy because it gives us a reward. Yes. What's difficult is talking on the phone and figuring out if this person's actually giving you what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I want to stay, as we kind of round out the conversation in this space for a little bit, because I got some some questions about butterflies, right? The spark, right? That kind of thing. And so I think we're coming into that now. It's like when you are maybe just getting to know someone, or you have that crush, what is happening, right, when you get the butterflies in the stomach kind of feeling? What's going on?
So adrenaline, cortisol, all being released in response to this feeling. And it doesn't need to be a bad thing. And again, with any stress, it's nuanced. So you could be stressed because you're about to go for a run, or you could be stressed because you just received a tax bill that you weren't expecting. They will have different effects on your system. One is good and one is not so good.
Yeah.
And so it is with the butterflies. You know, you could have butterflies because this person makes you feel good, or you've got butterflies because this person makes you feel anxious and you don't actually know if they like you, or they aren't treating you very nicely, or you're just trying to get some sort of reciprocation because your ego is saying, well, they didn't respond to me the way I wanted to, so I need to keep pushing this thing to see if I'm getting what I want.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Yeah. Really
and
helpful.
I think true butterflies, again, will feel open and fun and excited and make you feel good rather than leave you feeling empty and rubbish and like you don't actually, you know, what's that saying? Like, if you feel confused, then it's not that's an answer as well, or something like that.
Yeah.
And anyone that truly likes you, they will not leave you feeling confused. And if you are still confused for whatever reason and you ask the questions, they will be willing to reassure you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If they're not willing to reassure you, then that's a big red flag for me. I'm like, okay, well, you know.
Yeah, for me too. That's definitely a red flag, because that's going to be really important if you're dating, right? That you can express yourself to the person that you're getting to know, and that they can at least understand and see where you're coming from. And that's really important. Yeah.
And anyone with emotional maturity will understand that these are all normal things and feelings as well. And maybe they're going through the same thing. And I would be a little bit worried if they weren't. I mean, it's borderline psychopathic.
Yeah.
If you didn't have some level of emotion, right? Because that's the criteria of a psychopath, is they don't have emotions towards other people.
Another episode. What's happening in the brain there? Like, oh my God.
We should actually, there's so much I want to talk to you about, and I love talking about dating. So narcissists and psychopaths and all of that. So we could definitely do a pod 2.
Oh my God, I know the Flirties would be so into that. But about like the spark and the chemistry, like, 'cause I get this question all the time. It's one of those tried and true dating questions of, I think a lot of times daters, the flirties, they want to feel that instant, right, attraction, spark, that like, and if that's not there, then maybe this isn't the person for me, or not a connection that I should pursue. Or if it's not there, then they start getting a little bit like, ooh, why don't I like this person, or what's happening? And so I think giving the flirties that distinction of letting kind of more that slow burn, perhaps a little bit, because the sparks, the butterflies, it could be a stress response.
Yes. So, there's different ways of looking at this. And I think that different people bring to us different things. No love is the same ever. I've never been in love where it's been exactly the same.
Yeah.
And they all bring different things to the table and different experience. I mean, I haven't been in love enough to actually tell you exactly what the right answer is. And I don't actually know what the answer is. Yeah. But I've been in love where it's been catastrophic and dramatic and toxic, and that I never want again.
Yeah.
And I've also been in love where I didn't have the butterflies, but I built something really beautiful with this person. I mean, it didn't work out in the end. But that's not a bad thing. Right. For 5.5 years, we had this incredible relationship that we built together. And I remember vividly thinking, I'm going to walk into love with you instead of falling in. And I remember making that distinction. And so, not having the butterflies doesn't need to be a bad thing. It just maybe is a different kind of love. I don't know what's right and what's wrong. I personally, for the future, I know that I would like to be madly in love, but not have the toxic, anxiety with it. And I do think that exists, but I don't think that the toxic one's wrong. I don't think anyone should want that. But between the soft, gentle love that you decide to walk into and the madly in love one, I don't think that there's either right or wrong. I think they're both just different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally.
Does that answer your question?
Oh my gosh. So well. And I love this new kind of approach that I'm really hearing for the first time from you, is that process of walking into versus falling into. I think, we get conditioned in many ways through the media and movies and TV and books of that it's got to be this head over heels, love at first sight, just all consuming type of love connection, when in reality, I don't know. It's like there's no like hard and fast rule. It's this way or that way, but there's so much nuance. And when you can date from more this place of intuition and come back to yourself, makes such a difference.
And you can build amazing things with people through time as well. And they might not bring the same things as this madly in love situation, but then there's always a price you're going to have to pay. The madly in love situation might bring something else that you wouldn't get in the one where you walk into love.
Yeah.
So it's just figuring out what you want and giving things a chance. I think that as humans, especially in this day and age, we have so much available dopamine all the time that we can feel bored. And what is really interesting is that in the first 18 months, in the first 18 months of a relationship, dopamine is at its highest. Okay. And then it goes back down to baseline. It doesn't go away. But what happens is that it turns into more of a stability, a partnership. And that's where people start to think that things are boring or there's something wrong with the relationship. And you genuinely need to work a little bit harder to reinstill that spark or the excitement, right?
Okay.
And I think that that's really interesting because, it means that if you don't have that in the beginning, you could potentially just be like, okay, on to the next, because we have the available rewards at our fingertips all the time. You can order food on your phone. You can go and stalk your crush on your phone. You can go on Tinder and match with somebody else. And, so it's a lot of available dopamine all the time. And I think that's something to pay attention to.
You're so right. Yeah, I see this play out all the time. It's kind of like the instant gratification of dating, where it's like the second things get quote unquote boring or hard or difficult or too real, too emotional, right? So many air quotes here. It's like, boop, on to the next. I'm just going to go where it's easy, where I can get that hit. And I don't really want to focus on maybe the oxytocin, right? The bonding of it all, the true love hormone. Like,
I mean, I love love. I'm a big sucker for love. I read poetry and I'm like, Yeah, for me,
Yes.
it's something that I prefer to cultivate slowly as well.
Yeah.
Rather than this kind of like, okay, next, this is boring. I almost invite you to pay attention to the boring, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes, if I have or someone that I like, if they don't text or they text me, sometimes I'm like, I actually don't have anything to say, but I really like them. I just don't really want to talk right now because I don't have anything to respond to that's worthy of it.
I get that.
And that's not boring. It's just like I've got other things going on. It doesn't mean that I don't like this person. If anything, I like them even more because I can be quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or because they can be quiet.
That could be a whole other episode right there. Like,
sitting in the silence.
Yeah, I know daters experience that all the time. I hear it, right? And I've experienced that myself. It's in that space of silence, then maybe your anxiety starts to ramp up. Your sort of delulu goes a little bit all over the place. But we are
flirting in the silence. That's what we should call it. The sound of silence, flirting in the silence.
Next episode, flirting in the silence, because we truly are hopeful romantics here on Flirtations. We love love as well. Nicole, this has been just such a really fun, incredible, empowering conversation. Learning so much. I want to send the flirties your way to check out your book, your socials, your YouTube for sure. Where can they find you?
So Nicole's Neuroscience, there's an S in there, Nicole's Neuroscience, on Instagram, TikTok, which I don't use enough, and YouTube. And then my book, Rewire, Break the Cycle, Alter Your Thoughts, Create Lasting Change. I actually have a whole chapter on breakups. So anyone that's going through a hard time with breakups and wants to understand why you ruminate and obsess and all of that, it's all in there. And I give tools on how to hack your serotonin, hack your dopamine, hack the oxytocin so that you can start to feel a little bit better about your breakups. So I definitely encourage anyone to read it. And I would love to do an episode 2 and delve into this a little bit more.
I would love that as well. Thank you so much for being on the show today, being a part of the Flirt community. If you're looking for a book for your 2025 reading list, Rewire is there for you. I'm going to have it all linked in the show notes below. Nicole, this was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, flirties, that's a wrap on this episode of Flirtations, all about the neuroscience of the crush. Thank you so much to Nicole Vignola for being on the show today. I already cannot wait for part 2 to bring you another episode with Nicole. I had so much fun recording this, and as I was editing it, I could not wait to get it out there, and that it's debuting during Valentine's week, I just feel is so apropos. Because I know some of y'all got some crushes. So I hope this was a really fun and just insightful conversation. Thank you so much to Nicole for being on the show today. And thank you to you, the flirties, for listening, for tuning in, for streaming wherever you may be in the world. I could not do this without you. I can only listen to my podcast, my own voice, so many times. So thank you incredibly so much. And now please, if you would, rate, review, subscribe to the show if you haven't already. If you have, thank you so much. And I'd love for you to share this episode or another favorite episode you have with a friend, a family member, a coworker, a neighbor, someone you even mildly want to share some big flirt energy with. I'd love you for it. And that'll do it for me, Benjamin, the flirt coach, and Gay Libra here at Flirt Headquarters. Signing off officially, I'll leave you with this. Flirty. Happy flirting.